All right, welcome everybody. I understand there was some snackage going on, so I won't be surprised if we have a few more people wander in. And hello everybody out there in the virtual space. This says we're talking about accessible experiences, but we're really going to talk about equitability and making your best content. My goals for this session are to offer some grounding concepts for equitable content creation and access, introduce visual description, and expose some of the complexities inherent in aesthetically equitable multiplex experience, and hopefully successfully demo a fun little implementation that's designed to make these principles actionable for almost any kind of content. This session is applicable to you if you are a developer, a designer, a manager, a content creator, or a human who likes art, or any number of those things. I'm a product architect and CT of a boutique consultancy that specializes in multi-domain systems architecture, R&D, and novel problems. My personal specialty is high reliability UI, and there could be a couple digressions about design philosophy if we head that way. I am also a professional dancer and choreographer. It's not often that I come to tech conferences wearing all of these hats, but this is a lot of what I've been working on for the last 5 years in all my fields. This research and development largely happened in collaboration between my consultancy and Kinetic, which is a collective of disabled artists working at the intersections of disability, access, race, gender, dance, and tech. If questions come to you, please raise your hand, someone else's hand, the nearest furniture, and I'll try to take them in line. And if possible, I'll try to leave a few minutes at the end. You can also drop it in the Slack channel, of course, and I'll try to check in there later in the conference. Tweet at me, and if you want to get in deeper or play with the demo, I will be professionally available for the rest of the conference. Let's do a lightning round of the fundamentals. Accessibility is not compliance, is not a checklist, is not after the fact. Accessibility is culture, is conversation, is capacity that exists within all of us. Access is a way of expressing the factual reality of community and of interdependence. Sometimes people resist providing access because they don't want to acknowledge the ways in which access has been provided to them. The toxic and really kind of hilariously laughable idea that receiving help is somehow shameful. I'm pretty sure everyone here came through infancy. I don't think any of us emerged full grown from a vat. If you did, please let me know. I would love to hear about it. So at some point in your life, you have needed, deserved, and hopefully gotten help. Access is not one size fits all. Content which is created to provide accessibility should be given the same care as your initial medium. Equitable. This is often a hard one. If you were going to have a dinner party, would you invite people into your home and give one person a beautiful plated multi-course dinner and offer somebody else a sandwich and then expect them to sit down together and not have feelings about that? Notice that I'm not using the words inclusion or universal in reference to this work. Those concepts are directly harmful to real equity. Universal design is actually a great way to avoid centering the users you ought to be focusing on. And that, my friends, is a whole other talk. So I won't go any further with that just now. Aesthetics. A set of principles, usually relating to understanding art. In this case, accessibility as a way of understanding the work that you're making and your ability, expanding your ability to communicate it and for other people to experience it. Of course, these principles can be applied to basically anything. It really doesn't matter. They work pretty well across the board. But today, I'm using the experience of art. And let me actually go back here. Multiplex Experience. The equal validity of experiencing the world in different ways. If I see something but I don't hear it, and you hear it but don't see it, we are not having an equivalent experience. But it's possible that we're having an equitable experience. This is something that we as content creators, as people who create platforms for the consumption and distribution of content, that we as artists, I think, should be striving for. This is something that disabled people understand in community, that there are many ways of interfacing, understanding, sensing, interacting, experiencing. Wildly different, equally valid. And the complexity of simultaneous experience is one access of choice. Fortunately, this is something that technology gives us the tools to deliver. So today we're going to drill down on just one example. How many of you have heard of audio description? Okay, half a dozen. That's actually more than I was expecting. So audio description is really just translating relevant visual input into auditory input. As an access technique, this is primarily used for blind or low vision audiences, people who are primarily non-visual. So, real world example, just something simple to start us out with. Woman in blue shirt is an example of alt text that was created for this image. Does woman in blue shirt tell you anything useful? I had a discussion to that effect. Okay, we get to pointing finger. Well, that's important, but pointing finger. Smiling and pointing. Okay, we're getting somewhere now. And this is about the point where people start arguing with me about alt text character limits, which is true and a problem. There are a variety of ways that you can work around this. On the web, of course, by using ARIA roles. On social media, by putting your descriptions directly in captions or comments. And there's a utility to making things visible. If I were going to go for a full-out description here, I would have to use a paragraph to identify everything that we can glean visually from this image, because the color and styling of her hair tells us something. The fact that her jewelry and her nail polish is matched to her blouse tells us something. The quality of her expression and the way that she's holding her arms. A picture's worth 1,000 words, right? You know, here I got it down to 30 or so. Let's take something a little more complex. This is a rehearsal photo from a a setup I was testing a couple weeks ago. So what would you choose to pull out here as the important things? What are the bits that communicate? We can talk about what's going on. We can talk about the subject of the photo. We can talk about the context or the environment, in this case, a rather messy theater. Image description is complex and subjective, but fundamentally, it's about communication. That's pretty straightforward, right? Let's go, if I can navigate the multiple screens here.
In unison, they lean back in their wheelchairs, are carried into the air. They swing in long, pendulous arcs, holding hands, embracing. Then Alice hovers in front of Laurel, reaches back to take Laurel's hands, and together they swing. They continue.
This is one example of how audio description is commonly done for video, and this is an excellent interpretation, one of the best describers that we can find and who I've worked with extensively over the last few years to create specifically equitable, communicable content. But video description, of course, is even more complex. We have a range of styles. You could say there are as many styles of description as there are describers. It is a highly skilled and technical form. If you can imagine sitting in front of a play, a dance performance, and speaking as rapidly as you can to fit all of that in to language. And critically, I know this is weird, but certain users prefer different things. Some people prefer a very objective style. She raises her arm, pauses, raises again, now lifts it overhead. She raises her arm like the ticking of a clock. She raises her arm as if thoughtfully brushing paint onto a wall. These are all valid descriptions. They are all different styles. They are all communicative in different ways. So a couple years ago, we were putting together the first Kinetic Light performance, and we did what's called a work in progress showing. That's where you invite people where it's not finished. You know, kind of like your alpha version or, you know, release day if you're a AAA game company. So we filled a theater with our mentors and our students, our friends, some enemies, and put this out to about 200 people in San Francisco. And on the whole, it was received incredibly well. You know, for this, the first time we'd tried to do anything as artists of this scale. There was just one problem. We'd hired an excellent audio describer, the best in the Bay for dance. And our blind friends came up to us afterwards and said, hey, we don't know what happened. Like, people were gasping. We could hear them leaning forward in their seats, and there just wasn't anything that exciting in the audio description. Not through any lack of our describer, but because no one person can convey in narrow band speech everything that's happening in broadband sight. So we understood we had failed. After a long time, a lot of research, a lot of discussion, there were a handful of things we needed to fix. First, of course, a rich and equitable experience to sighted viewers. We needed to fix user agency. If you are sighted and watching a dance, you might take in the whole stage. You might focus in on just one dancer or one small section. You might close your eyes and listen to the music, rather than, here's this option, take it or leave it. We needed to solve it being secondhand rather than firsthand. Equitable art is created by the artist as a part of the creation. And when I say by the artist here, of course, that might be a single person. It is more likely a collective of collaborators. Art is no more made by one person on the whole than any piece of software is created by one person. You know, we have the same kinds of range of collaborators and teams going on. And we had to solve for the communality of the experience. Why do we go to theaters? Why do we go? Why don't we, we've been getting along just fine, right? Watching movies in our living room. Maybe you go out on the street, and if you've had bands set up in your street and you watch them from the porch, that's why I go to a theater. Because most people crave having experiences in community. So we can take from this that the solution needs to be aesthetically equitable, not equivalent, but equitable. Socially equitable, so not a segregated experience, but fully integrated in place and time and delivery. And flexible as to the type, the medium, the complexity, the style of the experience. So, I have a little demo here, but actually first, I'm going to ask you to imagine. This is a lovely big space. Imagine that we have speakers scattered through the space. Maybe they're on the ceiling, maybe they're in midair, anywhere in the volume. And let's make this fun. You can fly. So, when you come into the space, you can make your way around the room. Every speaker is playing a different track. Every track is part of the same performance. So you can go cuddle up to one speaker and listen from beginning to end. You can find a mix that pleases you. You can wend your way and keep moving so that the experience is constantly changing as you listen to it. And it plays from beginning to the end, and then it's done. Smush that up into a phone, and that's Audimance. What you're looking at here is a little mocked up queuing interface. So remember that I talked briefly about timing. For someone working in theater and performance art, timing is absolutely everything. So the way that we solve this for stage is that this receives cues from QLab. If you're not familiar, that is simply the most common piece of software used to coordinate all the technical components of a performance. So in this case, that means that there is a live person, generally your stage manager, that's kind of the description of their job, who calls these events. They see something on stage, they trigger it, someone pushes a button on the computer that QLab is running on, and it sends a UDP cue. Of course, the triggers can potentially be anything. They can be based on location, proximity, some other device. That part is, not actually super important. And unfortunately, it does not seem to want to play just yet, which probably means we're having difficulties downloading it over the network. This is always the risk of live demos, of course. Let's take one more try. All right, we'll give that just a second, and if that doesn't work, I will bring up some of the files individually. So if you were listening to this over headphones, the sound is fully spatialized. Why does that matter? Well, part of the trick here is that this application centers highly skilled listeners. The way I knew I was on the right track, so this has toured with a show. These are examples of real show tracks. You see 5 here. There's 9 running in the current version that actually tours. But the very first show where we ran this for a live audience, I knew I was on the right track when a fully sighted audience member who had insisted he wanted to try it came up to me afterwards in meltdown. He was screaming and having a tantrum. I looked at the logs later, and he'd made it less than 3 minutes into the performance. This is not designed to center a sighted user. This is designed to center users whose primary mode of experience is auditory. So if you are trying to watch and take in all of that and trying to listen, even to only one track, much less multiple tracks, you're not going to be able to process that. Much like any of you who are teachers probably have a fine grasp that most people cannot fully process things that are written and things that are heard at the same time. That's why you don't put wall of text on slides, right? So some of the examples of tracks here. There is traditional description up there in the right-hand corner. There is what we call ramp sounds that were created by miking the stage itself as the performance happens. So you get the combined sounds of the stage and the dancers' bodies, and that itself is subspatialized. Scene markers, simply kind of a play-by-play of the narrative. Play and poesy, soundscape, think Radiolab. Probably my favorite track, personally. And character narrative down there in the lower right corner is essentially a radio play style interpretation. So let's see. If we go cowboy on this, and I think I've got just about 10 minutes left here, so if this doesn't work, we will divert to afterwards. Throw this over there. I'm in the developer sandbox running locally on my machine now. Take a cue there and while we're here, let's go ahead and kill that. So the technical implementation is almost absurdly simple, frankly. In essentially the alpha mode as a web app, this has been running on a dedicated network with a Raspberry Pi.
I've lived my life in watery depths.
Bingo.
Far from shore.
And slowly rolls her way back up to the top.
All right. Nothing like a little reversal of the plan.
She sits up, takes hold of her
If I
foot,
can have my cursor back, please.
and spins counterclockwise. So now she's on her knees, facing left.
Stretch sends unfamiliar tremors.
She gets up on her knees, caresses the top
I
edge of the
rise in
ramp.
expectation of being stopped, pressed back down into
All right.
dark glow.
And I was playing with a different spatial model here, but
Lightest of substances
Stands partially up with her
rest
hands
upon my
on the pelican.
so as we move
Kicks one
around,
leg over onto the
cooling and
ramp.
encouraging.
here I'm just clicking, of
Edging
course,
closer
on a
to it, she
phone.
rolls onto
You
the
would drag
surface,
yourself.
nearly to the top of the ramp.
Between crests, enter the trough.
Watery images are now gone, and the projection of a
Fill
fetch guide
yourself
appears from the
with
peak of the
sunlight
light as Andromeda suddenly
and
appears from the
smoke.
back edge
Its
of the
gift to
platform.
me. Its message that I live,
Andromeda pulls
that I
herself up onto the
feel,
surface of the platform
that I
and lies
am.
on her back.
So,
I rise to a new surface,
changing everything flexibly as we go. This allows audiences to choose one track or many, to choose their style, to choose if they want to listen to a mix, and to customize their experience. And I would be remiss not to note that all of this is with great thanks to Georgina Klege and Josh Mealy. If that last name sounds familiar, he's in the new batch of MacArthur Fellows for work that I have drawn heavily on in order to create this. So, designed to work with distracted audiences, designed to work with terrible, terrible theater connections, and a wide variety of access needs or desires. Incredibly simple, as bulletproof and resilient as we could make it. If you've ever tried to check your phone in a theater, you have a good idea that the networks are usually kind of horrific. Therefore, also why we've been running a dedicated network for it in alpha. Moving forward, this is an open source project, and we're building a substantial coalition of support. The next stop is, of course, taking it to a native mobile version instead of a web app. This is necessary for a variety of reasons, including improved access to haptics, geolocation for geofencing, the ability to autoplay. Yes, autoplay. Because when you go in the theater, the performance begins when it begins, and you shouldn't have to take an extra step to initiate it. Creator UI, which right now is a manual upload, as well as the manual placement of those spatialized tracks. I've actually been having a lot of fun while this is in alpha, taking the listening data from each performance and reshaping the tracks based on that. So basically determining what people are listening to and which combinations of things are drawing high percentage values. And that separates out into roughly 3 clusters of the 9 tracks. So I've been using that to reshape that particular spatial set. But of course, we need a GUI version of that. Visual clone. Our research with deaf and hard of hearing artists and audience members suggests that there's a way in which we can apply this also to visual interpretation. So, just as it takes multiple kinds of audible interpretation, a performance needs multiple kinds of visual interpretation. Venue UI. This should be plug and play for any venue to offer access consistently for every show. Because, well, by the way, if you think shows are accessible, I've got some bad news for you. Performance enhancements. Down the road, frankly, it works surprisingly well right now for something that was created out of need and dream and desire. So, thank you, everybody. I think we've actually got maybe like 2 minutes left for questions. 2. Absolutely. That is one of the reasons I specifically mentioned collaboration and the reality of teams of collaborators really creating any piece of art. There's a lot of ways you could approach that. The one that I would probably use is to bring in a collaborator focused on that role. Ideally, that would be someone who has access to all the other members of the creative team, because, okay, you're describing the actors, you were describing the actors' bodies. They ideally have a voice in that. You're describing the costumes, you're describing the lights. And when you are describing things, there's a combination of what are you seeing, what are you using your judgment to pick out that that is communicating, what is important about that, and what was the artist's intent, what is the artist trying to communicate. I find it helpful to work with a little bit of both. So, you know, obviously in some cases your playwright may be dead or may not be available, but you have your actors, you have your director, you have your designers, who can all become part of this process where, yeah, it's not one person. Nothing that makes it to stage is ever just one creator. And the art world has been a little slow to recognize that in a lot of ways. You know, the director or the choreographer or whatever is not, you know, the sole artist. It's the, you know, genius myth in action on that side of things, if you will. So here's the thing about this system. Most venues who provide audio description by large dedicated hardware systems, frequently operating via IR or other line of sight methods, they're expensive, they're clunky, they're a pain to install, and they're a pain to use. And then to provide audio description, you have to bring in a live describer. We allow you to do the description from anywhere. We're not taking away the job of describer, we're blowing it open. So this uses the audience members' own personal hardware. When I talked about geofencing, you enter the theater, here's your show. So for venues, this is an incredibly attractive proposition. For artists, we're working with the people who are excited about the possibility of how thinking in these expanded ways, thinking about additional media, informs their work. If this is not for someone, I'm not interested in working with them personally. That's, you know, not any fun. And fortunately, there are a lot of people who are really excited about the ways that this makes them better artists. And I think that is our cue. We are at time. Thank you, everybody, for coming. And tweet me, hit the Slack channel, or grab me if you want to play with the demo in more depth. Find the repo on GitHub. Thank you all.